Welcome back to Mr. Recaped. Today I will show you a drama, crime film from 2015, titled Loving Pablo. Spoilers ahead. Watch out and take care. The movie starts by telling us this is based on real, if perhaps exaggerated events. Our narrator is famous journalist and television presenter Virginia Vallejo, who currently is on a plane, leaving her country because of a man in 1993. A DEA agent called Shepard is there as well. When they make it to the USA, Virginia is taken to a hotel, and once she gets in her room, Shepard tells her she'll be meeting with officials from the Justice Department and told the corresponding procedures. Another agent tells her she isn't allowed to leave the room or communicate with anyone for the sake of her own safety. Virginia is having a headache, so she asks for an aspirin, but Shepard tells her hotels can offer it because it's considered a drug. This makes her laugh and think Pablo would have laughed too before he would have had them all killed. The flashbacks start then, so we can see how all this started. The year is 1981, the country is Colombia. We meet Pablo Escobar while he's riding his bike with some friends and employees through an open field. One of the men crashes his bike against a horse, leaving the animal hurt on the ground. When everyone stops to see what happened, they take out their guns and decide to shoot the horse to take it out of its misery. Moments later they return to Pablo's mansion, where he is chatting with his wife Victoria about the party they are hosting later at night and all the important people that will be coming. Victoria can't stop looking through the window to watch her son in the pool and a man sitting nearby. She tells Pablo she doesn't like this, that business and family should stay separate. So Pablo goes out to do something about it. He throws a coin in the pool to distract his son, then talks business with the other man. He's given the mission of destroying some files that connect Pablo to the murder of 24 agents. The man gets permission to kill anyone that needs to be killed and a high amount of money to cover expenses and weapons. A few hours later, a younger Virginia is arriving at Pablo's ranch by plane. They've all heard about Pablo but never met him. He's just the top name on the list of the new rich. Virginia is freaking out because she sees people with weapons waiting for them, thinking she's going to be kidnapped. When she gets out of the plane, Pablo explains the land is a zoo and the weapons are for the animals. Virginia complains to him, thinking he's a servant. They take the jeeps to go to the house, and on the way, Pablo shows them the animals. Later at night, the party is in full swing. Virginia is surprised to learn the man from before is the actual Pablo, and she mentions the speculation that is going around about his past, but Pablo doesn't want to talk about it. He explains the party is to celebrate the founding of his society, which is building houses for the poor. She asks where the money comes from. He avoids the question. What she didn't know back then is that what they were truly celebrating was the founding of the Medellin cartel. A couple of days later, Pablo takes Virginia to visit the slums to show her all the houses he's building. Most kids of the area are named Pablo after him. Virginia interviews Pablo for her show, and when he gives a heartfelt speech about making Colombia the country they dream about, Virginia decides that she doesn't care how Pablo makes his money, only how he uses it. Later on, the two of them go out for dinner. Virginia comments she's married but not by choice. Her husband won't sign the divorce papers. Because Pablo doesn't like hanging out with married women, he says he'll fix it for her. We cut to Virginia's husband being visited at his job by Pablo's men to threaten him. Next we jump to Virginia's show, where she's informed her husband has finally signed the papers. To celebrate her freedom, Pablo takes Virginia to a private island, where they make love before attending a congress of drug traffickers. Virginia is introduced to all of Pablo's associates and shown off as a trophy, but she's never felt safer. That night, the men divide the USA among them for their narco business. A year later, we see how the drug arrives in the States. On the highway, there's a truck that suddenly turns to block the way, and its drivers threaten any complaining car drivers with their guns. Now that the road is empty, a plane uses it to land and release its cargo. Lots of men jump off their cars to pick it up while Virginia tells us how a kilo will be cut here to make double profit. Now the drug has entered the country, President Donald Reagan must speak to the nation about the subject. Shepard is in the White House too, overseeing the transmission, when he's approached by an American and a Colombian representative that tell him that since most of the drug is coming from Colombia, they're working to reactivate the extradition treaty. That would allow Colombia to catch the narcos, but the USA gets to try them, because in Colombia, narcos just pay or threaten the judges. Shepard accepts to monitor the whole process. After hearing about this, Pablo and his associates get together to discuss how it affects them. The treaty puts them in danger, and they can hire some lawyers to appeal, but Pablo thinks this must be fought from the inside. The others think it's a bad idea to get involved in politics, but Pablo disagrees. If you enter Congress, they respect you because you're one of them. Besides, running for office costs a lot of money. It's not for workers, it's for people like them. The cartel starts paying off politicians on both sides then, so no matter who wins, they win. Their planes carry candidates during the day and take the drugs to the States at night. Some months later, we find Victoria talking to Pablo about this. She thinks he's taking things too far. He doesn't see his family often and already has lots of money. She doesn't understand what else he could want. He replies he wants respect and his son to be proud of him. Upset, Victoria rushes to her room, Pablo follows her and asks her if she wouldn't want to be the first lady. She replies she wants to be the only one and demands him to break things up with Virginia. He promises her it's over, but days later, he's sleeping with Virginia again. Pablo continues to work on his political campaign with Virginia's help, gaining many followers with his speeches. On the day of the election, everybody gets together to watch the results and it's confirmed Pablo wins as representative of Medellin. It's July 1982 when Pablo goes to the House of Representatives for the first time, and while he isn't stopped from entering for being a trafficker, he is stopped for not wearing a tie. He borrows one from the journalists that are dying to help him. We then cut to see Pablo filling Virginia's bag with money. She thinks he wants her to smuggle it, but he says it's actually a gift and she can spend it all. Time passes and it's now 1983, Virginia has been using the money to get expensive accommodations, jewelry and clothes. Meanwhile, Pablo is teaching his son how to make and cut the drug, but also to never take it himself. Back to Virginia, she's arriving at her hotel when Shepard approaches her and asks her to join him for a drink. He asks her how Pablo makes his money. Virginia points out the DEA doesn't have any authority to interfere in Colombian politics. Shepard says his country is worried about all the drug that's getting in, but Virginia thinks that's a lie. What worries them is the money going out. That's why they don't care about the Italian mafia. They keep their money in the USA. Shepard wonders what Pablo said when Virginia told him she would be seeing. Virginia replies he said she should make sure the USA pays the bill. Months later, Virginia arrives at the Medellin airport, but Pablo isn't there to pick her up because he was called to a special Congress session in Bogota. They want to revoke his appointment. We cut to the Congress then, where a minister is talking about Pablo's presence among them being a disgrace because of his shady business. Pablo replies by saying the minister should present evidence not only of his accusations, but also of where the money for his own campaign comes from. He tells the president he can prove many of these ministers received shady money for their campaigns, but then the minister takes over and makes fun of him in front of everyone. Later at night, Victoria begs Pablo to resign before things get worse and tells him she's pregnant. She makes him promise their baby won't suffer, but they're interrupted by an urgent phone call. Pablo's past has reached the news. He will pay 500 pesos for every newspaper taken from the streets before people see them. We see men following the newspaper delivery trucks and picking up everything they drop while Virginia tells us the details. The published story backs up the minister's claims and connects Pablo to the murder of 2 policemen in his youth. The man that had been sent to erase this evidence is tortured and killed for failing. Days later, the cartel gets together to discuss what to do with this minister. Pablo wants to assassinate him, and everybody should put money for it so they're all guilty. Some of his associates don't like this idea, but he convinces them there's no other choice. The next day, Pablo is having dinner with Virginia when he gifts her a box to celebrate things are about to change. He wants her to carry this gift with her all the time. Virginia opens it and is distressed to find a gun inside, which she doesn't want. Pablo tells her things are about to get very complicated, and to make her understand, he starts explaining in detail how she would be raped and tortured if they captured her, and if she takes the gun, she can either protect herself from her attackers or shoot herself before they get to her. This greatly upsets Virginia, who is now crying and asks Pablo to take her home. We then cut to Pablo visiting a camp of sicarios where youngsters from the slums are trained to kill. He hires 2 of them, who go to the streets on their bike and approach the minister's car from behind. They shoot him when they get close enough, then quickly drive away. Virginia's show is interrupted so she can tell the nation about the news of the minister's death. While Victoria watches the show and cries, Virginia explains the president activates the extradition agreement and Pablo decides to take his business to Panama. It is now 1984. In Panama, the cartel has a meeting with an ex-president sent by the government to negotiate. Pablo accepts to pay taxes and take some money to the USA in exchange for not being extradited to another country. The ex-president tells him he can't remove the treaty without talking to the Americans. Pablo replies he better finds a way to do it or there'll be war. Things get worse from then on. Pablo couldn't keep his promise and his son is born outside Colombia. The editor that published his past gets killed and Virginia has started to get threats on the phone and being followed. She returns home one night to find Pablo there, who tells her this isn't his fault and promises things will be fine. Virginia thinks he's losing his mind and leaves the room when he tries to kiss her. The threatening of people becomes a whole genre for Pablo. He kills a judge by sending a coffin to his house, then starts handing out guns in the slums. He'll pay people for every cop they kill. The higher the rank, the better the money. Death is everywhere now. Officers keep getting killed by the second, so they decide to strike back by shooting 10 teenagers from the slums for every murdered cop. The Colombian government ends up creating a special unit exclusively to deal with Pablo, so the DEA sends Shepard to check out the unit's facilities. Since the extradition treaty isn't working, the Americans are coming to catch him themselves. They install a whole system to track phone calls and pinpoint Pablo, but the people from the slums trick them by calling all at the same time from different locations. Back to Virginia, we find her at the TV studio talking to her boss, who's fired her and replaced her with someone younger. No matter how many times he denies it, Virginia is sure this happened because of her connection to Pablo. She leaves the office making a scene and threatening her boss by telling him Pablo will get him. When she's out of the building, she finds Shepard waiting for her. He takes her to a bar for a drink. Virginia tells him getting fired is a good thing and she has an offer waiting for her in Florida. She also tries to flirt with him. Shepard turns her down and calls her lie. She has no offers, nobody will hire her now. He offers her protection in exchange for her helping them find Pablo, but she stays loyal to him. It's then that they notice a car spying on them outside. Shepard runs out with his gun but the car drives away before he can catch it. Virginia calls Pablo to tell him what happened. He says he isn't following her. Scared and upset, she tries to break up with him, but he hangs up. We learn then that Pablo has many teenage girlfriends, young girls handed in by the parents in exchange of money. It takes only one of them to talk for the search block to find him. Some helicopters arrive at Pablo's ranch and open fire. Pablo's men shoot back and even freeze some birds that fly against one of the helicopters and make it crash. Pablo escapes and becomes unreachable, and his associates are getting worried about the business ending, but they start getting killed as well. Pablo can only stay on the run. In 1989, he calls a radio station, declaring full war on the government and threatening to blow up the station to prove it's him. Meanwhile, Virginia is in Miami doing an interview on TV. When later she goes to the airport, the FBI approaches her and asks her for her passport before she hears some upsetting news. The Bogota airport has been closed because a plane has exploded in mid-flight. After all these bombs, the country asks the government to give Pablo hell. But after even more bombs, the people ask the government to give Pablo what he wants. At the U.S. Embassy, Shepard gets a clue from another agent by looking at the names of the passengers that survived the plane bombing. Shepard goes to talk to the ambassador to ask permission to go after Pablo, but Pablo's lawyer is already there, arranging the details of his surrender. In 1991, the extradition treaty is revoked, and Pablo hands himself to the authorities with the condition he gets to choose his own jail. They build a special building on his own land, but it's nothing like an actual jail. There are all kinds of fancy comforts including a soccer field. He continues to work his business with his associates there. He has parties with drinks and women, and on Sundays, he has lunch with his family. It's during one of these lunches that his daughter tells him her mom says he can't leave and she cries all time. Feeling defied, Pablo picks up his daughter and tells her he'll take her out for ice cream. The first guards he encounters open the doors for him out of fear, but when he makes it outside, the gate guards turn their weapons on him. Pablo cries as Victoria shows up to stop him and take her daughter back. Meanwhile, Virginia is having trouble. All media has banned her and her advertising contracts have been cancelled, so she has to sell her home to pay her debts. She rents an apartment where the First Lady is living, hoping her guards will keep her safe too. With a new phone number, she gets a break from the phone threats, but not for long. She ends up visiting Pablo at his jail to ask him if she can feel safe and to tell everyone they aren't together anymore to stop the threat. Since it's his fault that her career is over, she also asks for money to move to Europe. When Pablo refuses, she threatens him with possibly going to the police to tell them what she knows, but he scares her into taking her words back. In 1992, Pablo meets with two of his associates, who owe him money. Since they refuse to pay, Pablo gets them killed, and these murders reach the media, making the government an accomplice. It's decided to transfer Pablo to military prison, but when the officers make it to his prison, he's already gone. The switch to the electric fence was in his room. In a little house in the middle of nowhere, Pablo hides. His men tell him people are turning on them because he's lost credibility. If he killed his associates, they think he could kill anyone. Pablo doesn't think it was a mistake, but it was. Pablo's associates cooperate with the government in exchange for having their records clean. Dozens of narcos ready to fight him are released, and together with government officers, they start a lethal hunting party. They start killing any person who has ever associated themselves with Pablo, and they always leave a message with the bodies that says for working for Pablo Escobar. This puts Virginia in danger too. One afternoon, when she's at a pawn shop trying to sell her jewelry, the hunting party attacks, and it's only thanks to the window being bulletproof that she survives. Meanwhile, Pablo is hiding in a small apartment with his family. While chatting to his daughter, he notices his wife is crying. Turns out their kid won't be allowed to be in a school show because the other parents don't want her there. They're afraid Pablo will blow up the school. Pablo accepts things are getting too dangerous for them there, so he tells Victoria to take the kids and fly out of the country so he can take care of everything. In the meantime, Virginia goes see Shepard at the embassy, finally willing to cooperate. She tells him Pablo's weakness is his family and that they shouldn't be allowed to leave the country, otherwise Pablo will start destroying everything when they're gone. Shepard takes this information to his boss, who says they can't do this because of the deal. But Shepard explains his plan to use the family as bait and finally capture Pablo when he tries to contact them, so his boss accepts to break the deal and go with that idea. It is now 1993. Pablo's family is denied entrance to Germany and sent back to Colombia. The DEA takes over them and hides them in an apartment building where they've set up operations to track incoming calls. Pablo learns about this by watching the news and calls his family to check on them. He's promising he will rescue them when he realizes they're being listened on, so he starts insulting and threatening the officers. Victoria asks him not to call again, but he ignores her as he hangs up. The bait is too powerful though, so moments later, Pablo is calling them again. The officers manage to pinpoint his location and go after him while he talks to his kids. First he chats with his daughter, then he asks for his son so he can teach him what to tell the press when all this is over. He leans against the window while doing so, giving the cops a full view of where he's staying at. The cops break in while he's still on the phone. Pablo hears them but doesn't even hang up before he and his partner are moving to the window, guns ready. They jump out of it when the door explodes, but it's too late, they're shot and killed right there on the roof, and his son hears it all through the phone. In the other room, the DEA agents are celebrating, but Virginia looks sad. Shepard comes by to pick her up and take her to a safe place, and the movie ends with a flashback to her conversation about the terms of her cooperation with the police. She says she loved Pablo, but hated Escobar, so she accepts to talk to a federal judge. Pablo wanted her to tell his story after all. He just never specified to whom. Make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you can watch more videos like this. Thanks for watching.